Ready for a deep dive into the South Asian diaspora? We're going way back in time with this one.
Way back.
We're talking handwritten autobiography, folks.
Oh, yeah, real hidden gem.
Tucked away in a book called Kalapani, Studies on South Asian Diaspora.
And it's not just any old autobiography, right? This is Alice Bhagwandy Sital Persaud, sharing her life story.
And what a story it is.
It really is.
You're experiencing history firsthand through Alice's words.
Exactly. And with experts like Professor Mohan Gautam, a scholar of Indian culture, and Dr. Moses Seenarine, a sociologist editing the collection.
Okay, so we've got some serious academic weight behind this.
Oh, absolutely.
You're getting both personal stories and, like, real in-depth analysis.
You've got it. It's that perfect blend of storytelling and scholarship.
All right, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
We're off to Surname with Alice.
Surname it is.
Born in 1892, can you imagine?
Wow, 1892.
Yeah, she starts by describing her childhood in this charming cottage.
A cottage.
Yeah, owned by this well-off man she called Gautam Papa.
Gautam Papa. Okay, what a nickname.
Right.
So who is this Gautam Papa?
Sten Bakery Strait in Paramaribo. That was the place to be, apparently, at least for a young Alice who clearly adored this man.
It sounds like he held a special place in her heart.
He really did. She talks about carriage rides with him like it was yesterday.
Oh, carriage rides.
But woven into those happy memories, there's this tragic tale of his decline after his daughter's illness.
Oh, that's sad.
It's like this glimpse into how traditional beliefs influenced even wealthy families back then.
Right, because even in a changing world, those old ways held on tight.
Totally. And then there's her name.
Oh yeah, what's in the name, right?
Alice, her mom's choice. A touch of the Western world.
A little nod to the times.
But her dad,
What did he call her?
he called her Bhagwandy, a beautiful Hindu name meaning God's gift.
God's gift. That's beautiful.
And get this, he even tried to officially change her name to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Why Elizabeth?
After Gautam Papa's mother.
Wow. Talk about trying to maintain those connections.
Can you believe that?
It's amazing what people did back then to kind of like get ahead or show respect.
Right. It makes you think about the power dynamics at play in colonial Suriname.
Absolutely, and how people navigated those complex relationships.
Okay, so let's talk about this whole cultural collision thing, because it gets even more interesting.
Date on me.
Alice's family is like a melting pot of backgrounds.
Oh, I love a good melting pot story. Tell me more.
Her father, Sital Persaud Dubey, a devout Hindu Brahmin from India, very much rooted in his traditions.
Okay, so strong cultural ties there.
But her mother, Mary Dully, had a fascinating background too.
Oh,
Raised Christian.
okay, so different religious upbringings already.
And her own father had been an interpreter from Bengal.
Wow, talk about a diverse family tree.
Talk about a recipe for some interesting family dynamics.
Right, you've got different cultures, different languages, different religions, all under one roof.
It makes you wonder how they navigated those differences in their daily lives.
And what influence it had on Alice growing up in that environment.
Right. Talk about a unique lens on history.
Absolutely. It's these personal stories that really bring the past to life.
And she doesn't shy away from those details. She talks about her father speaking Hindi and Urdu, even teaching her mother some Hindi.
Wow, so he was really keen on keeping those language traditions alive.
Yeah, but her mother,
What about her?
firmly Christian.
So that religious divide was definitely there.
Imagine growing up in that house, hearing those different languages, those different beliefs.
It must have been fascinating for her, like growing up in a microcosm of different worlds.
Right.
And then there's Alice's paternal grandmother, Mai.
My.
She wasn't just a background figure. She actively shaped Alice's father's life, which in turn influenced Alice. Talk about a chain reaction of cultural influence.
It's true, those strong female figures in her life really jump out at you.
They do. It's like this powerful lineage of women shaping their destinies.
My story is remarkable in itself. Arriving from India with Alice's father, she faced the harsh realities of indentured servitude head-on.
It wasn't an easy life for many who came from India during that time.
Great, and she refused to work in the fields.
She refused.
She showed them her soft, small hands, a small act of defiance that landed her a position as an assistant nurse on the plantation.
Wow, what a story.
What grit!
Talk about knowing your worth and standing up for yourself.
It's like this refusal to be defined by circumstance.
Exactly.
And that resilience is mirrored in Alice's own life, wouldn't you say?
Well, absolutely. Like grandmother, like granddaughter, right?
Right.
But, you know, we can't forget about Alice's own mother in all of this.
Oh, absolutely not.
Imagine adapting to a new culture, facing your husband's diabetes, and then enduring the tragic loss of a child at sea, her son, Harry.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is. And yet she carried on with incredible resilience.
It makes you think about all the unsung heroes of the diaspora.
The women like Alice's mother who faced incredible challenges with strength and grace.
Absolutely.
Their stories deserve to be told and celebrated.
They really do. Speaking of journeys, let's follow Alice's path to education.
Sounds good.
She attends the Louise Convent School.
Okay, a convent school.
Likely one of the few Indian students there.
You have to wonder what that experience was like for her.
Right. It makes you think about those social dynamics, a young Indian girl in a colonial institution.
Navigating those different worlds, those different expectations.
Exactly. An experience that probably shaped her worldview in some pretty profound ways.
Oh, absolutely. Education has that power, doesn't it? It shapes how you see the world, how you see yourself.
It does. And this whole theme of navigating different worlds, it becomes even more prominent as she transitions into adulthood.
And speaking of adulthood, we've got to talk about Alice's arranged marriage.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't just any wedding. This was a major production.
You can say that again.
Yeah.
Arranged marriages back then, they were a whole different ballgame.
Right. And don't forget, she was a Brahmin.
Considered high caste.
Exactly. So her marriage to Jung Bahadur Singh.
Interesting. It wasn't exactly viewed as an ideal match by traditional standards.
Not exactly a match made in caste heaven, let's just say that.
Right. It makes you wonder about the family dynamics, the societal pressures at play.
Oh, totally. Alice even mentions her father having to work some serious magic convincing the pundits to give their blessing.
So there was some resistance.
There was definitely some convincing going on.
It makes you appreciate how much times have changed, doesn't it?
It does, and the wedding itself.
Well, tell me everything.
Now that's what I call a celebration.
Lay it on me.
She describes a civil ceremony, a church blessing for her mother's sake, and then the grand finale.
Okay, the grand finale.
A traditional Hindu wedding at the immigration depot, no less.
Wow, the immigration depot. That's an interesting choice of venue.
Can you imagine?
It's not your average wedding hall, that's for sure.
Hundreds of guests, fireworks lighting up the night sky, a feast fit for royalty.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does. Talk about a blending of cultures.
It's like this beautiful fusion of traditions and modern influences.
And speaking of blending cultures,
Hit me with it.
Alice and Young then relocate to British Guiana.
Okay, British Guiana.
And talk about a culture shock, even for someone who'd grown up in Suriname.
I can only imagine.
Imagine going from the familiar streets of Paramaribo to living with your in-laws and a whole house full of siblings.
Oh boy. Talk about a crash course in family life.
Right.
And in a whole new cultural context.
Exactly. She even describes her wardrobe, long dresses, tight corsets, layers of petticoats and lace.
Wait, hold on. Layers upon layers in that climate.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about intense.
And remember, this is a tropical climate.
I mean, I can barely handle a light jacket when it's a little chilly out.
Right.
Alice was a trooper.
She was. It really shows how even within the South Asian diaspora, those regional differences were huge.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about coming from the same part of the world, right? It was about navigating these microcultures, these regional customs and expectations.
It was. And Alice had to adapt yet again.
To a new home, a new husband.
And a baby on the way.
Oh, wow. A baby.
Her first child, Hardit, is born while Young is away in India.
So she's really on her own with a newborn.
She really is. But like the trooper she is, Alice takes it all in stride.
She sounds like a remarkably resilient woman.
She really is. And this whole pattern of separation and reunion, it becomes like a defining characteristic of their marriage.
You mean because of Young's work?
Exactly. His work as a ship compounder took him to some pretty exotic locations.
I bet. Where did his work take him?
He traveled extensively. India, Fiji, Mauritius, Jamaica, you name it.
Wow. I'm kind of jealous.
Talk about a long-distance relationship on another level, right?
Seriously. And Alice is holding down the fort back home?
She is. She has 2 more daughters, Lou and Sue.
A growing family.
All while managing the household and basically raising a family single-handedly.
Talk about strength.
It really makes you think about the unsung heroes of the diaspora, these women who are often left to shoulder so much responsibility.
It's a side of history we don't always hear about, but it's so important to remember.
It really is. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more eventful,
Well, there's more.
Jung makes a life-altering decision.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What does he do?
He sets his sights on becoming a doctor in England.
Whoa! Talk about a plot twist.
Right.
So they're packing up and moving again.
It wasn't just about a change of scenery either.
It was about opportunity, right?
Absolutely. It was about seeking a better future for himself and his family.
You have to admire that drive, that ambition.
You do.
Yeah.
But relocating an entire family across continents in the early 1900s,
That's no small feat.
It sounds daunting even today.
It really does. The logistics alone would be mind-boggling.
They traveled first class on the RMS Tagus. Apparently, having a whole contingent of Singhs on board got them a family discount.
now that's what I call leveraging your network.
Right.
So they land in Southampton, take a train to Edinburgh, and guess what?
What?
They're met by a familiar face, George Barry.
Talk about a whirlwind of change. 1 minute you're in British Guiana, the next you're in Edinburgh.
It makes you wonder what went through their minds as they arrived,
Right. This bustling city so different from anything they'd ever known.
especially with World War I looming on the horizon.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a tense time to be arriving in a new country.
It was a period of great uncertainty and upheaval all across the world. It really was. But in the midst of it all, here they were embarking on this brand new chapter.
With a mix of apprehension, excitement, maybe even a little bit of fear.
Absolutely. It really sets the stage for what happens next. Edinburgh, 1914. A world on the brink of war, and Alice and her family are stepping into a whole new life.
Talk about a pivotal moment in history,
Right.
both for the world and for Alice personally.
It's like she's juggling all these different narratives at once.
Oh, absolutely. Adapting to a new culture, creating a home for her family, all while the world around her is teetering on the edge of change.
And they're starting from scratch in a way.
It sounds like it.
Their new home, 15 Melville Terrace, sounds pretty Spartan at first.
Spartan how so?
She describes beds, a few chairs, bare essentials.
So they really had to make it their own.
Exactly. But you can practically see her rolling up her sleeves, determined to make this house a home.
The sense of resourcefulness really shines through in her writing, doesn't
It really does. And remember, she's doing all of this while raising 3 young children.
Hardet, Lou, and Sue.
Yes. It makes you wonder what daily life was like for her in Edinburgh as an Indian woman.
Right. Navigating a society that might have seen her as an outsider.
Totally. Taking her children to school, interacting with neighbors, experiences that most of us take for granted, but for her it must have been like stepping into another world.
It's those everyday interactions where cultural differences really come to the forefront, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then, as if things weren't challenging enough, World War I erupts.
Talk about a turning point for everyone.
Right. The world kind of held its breath.
And for Alice, the impact was incredibly personal.
It really was. We learn about her brother Harry's experience.
Harry, the one with the infectious laugh.
Yes. He had quite the ordeal just trying to return to Europe.
What happened?
He was detained, questioned, just because of an old address in his pocketbook.
You've got to be kidding me. An old address.
That's what she says.
It's frightening how quickly suspicion could derail someone's life back then.
Absolutely.
Right.
And tragically, the war hit even closer to home for Alice.
I think we all know where this is going.
The news of Harry's death.
His ship hit a mine, didn't it?
It did.
It's a stark reminder of the human cost of war, the ripple effects of conflict that extend far beyond the battlefields.
So far from home, grappling with this immense loss, it's hard to imagine what she must have been going through.
Especially because Harry had undergone his own transformation, hadn't he? He wasn't just the life of the party anymore.
Right, he'd gotten married, become a father himself.
It makes his loss even more profound.
It does. And then, just like that, Alice's autobiography ends.
It ends. Just like that.
It does. It's abrupt, almost like she just ran out of time to tell us more.
I know. It's like we've only just scratched the surface of her story.
We're left with so many questions. Did Jung become a doctor? Did they stay in Edinburgh? Did they ever return to Suriname?
The possibilities are endless, right?
They are. But maybe that's part of what makes Alice's story so captivating.
It's true. We're left to imagine those missing chapters, to fill in the gaps with our own interpretations.
And I think that's a powerful thing.
It is, because it keeps her story alive.
Yeah.
It makes us active participants in her narrative.
And it reminds us that history isn't just something that happened in the past. It's something we're still grappling with today.
Oh, absolutely. Those themes of cultural identity or resilience, the human cost of conflict, they're just as relevant now as they were back then.
Absolutely. Alice's story might have ended, but the conversations it sparks those continue.
And that's what's so exciting about diving into these personal histories. They challenge us to think differently, to see the world through someone else's eyes.
Exactly. And in a world that often feels increasingly divided, I think that's a powerful message.
It is. It's a reminder that even in our differences, there's always common ground. There's always something we can learn from each other's stories.
Beautifully said. Alice Bhagwandy Sital Persaud, her story might have ended abruptly, but her legacy that lives on. Thanks to everyone for joining us on this incredible journey.